fire of vengeance burns brightest when the past refuses to stay buried. From snowy exile to the call of war, Kael's journey now enters its bloodiest chapter. The line between hero and destroyer blurs when all that remains is loss. This is not just a war, it is a reckoning. Welcome to Episode 7 of The Lost Chapters, Ashes of Empire. Kael stood at the edge of the ancient ravine, his cloak billowing in the cold morning wind. With him stood Marcus, his loyal friend, and Quintus, once his father's companion, now his own. Around them gathered a band of warriors, half Roman deserters who still believed in justice, half fierce barbarians from the northern tribes who now called Kael their kin. They had all come for one reason: war. Word had come from spies. Scarpus, now a powerful senator, had raised a legion in secret, not for defense, not for Rome, but to destroy Kael and all who followed him. Kael knew what this meant. If Scarpus struck first, his people, his new family, would fall. So he chose to strike before the serpent could hiss. In the months that followed, battles raged like storms. Forests burned, villages changed hands, hills were soaked in blood. The war was no grand parade. It was ambush and retreat, fire and frost. Every step forward cost lives. Every victory was paid in flesh. And still, Kael pushed on. He fought not for Rome, but for something older, for the soul of a man his father once was, for the people who had taken him in, and for a world where honor still meant something. But war, Kael knew, would ask for everything. As spring passed into summer, the battlefield shifted. What was once a campaign of survival became a series of calculated strikes. Kael learned fast. From Marcus, he absorbed Roman formations. From the barbarians, he adopted guerrilla tactics, fast raids, night ambushes, traps laid with bone and snow. His name became legend in the outer provinces. The Red Wolf, they called him, the ghost of the north. But legends do not win wars. Supplies ran thin, men grew tired. For every victory Kael won, another came harder. Then came the Battle of Cragfall Ridge. There Kael faced Scarpus's elite, men trained from youth in the arts of war. Kael's forces fought like wolves cornered, desperate, brutal, fearless. The ridge was won, but at a cost. 100 dead, Marcus wounded, and whispers began to grow. Could they win this war? Kael stood under blood-red skies that night, staring down at the fires. He knew Scarpus would not rest. He would burn the world to destroy him. And far away in marble halls, Scarpus was already planning something worse than war. In Rome, where war is waged not with swords but whispers, Scarpus walked beneath pillars of gold. His face was calm, but his mind burned with fury. Kael, the boy he thought dead, now led armies. defied him openly, threatened his place in the Senate. Worse yet, whispers of Kael's victories had reached the ears of the people. The senators began to murmur. Could this outlaw return and make a claim? Scarpus could not allow that. Then a report came. A scout, bribed and beaten, spoke of a village, a hidden place where Kael's woman and child lived. The northern girl and the child, Kael's heir. Scarpus said nothing aloud, but his eyes told the truth. He summoned a trusted mercenary captain. No Roman uniform, no flags, just fire and orders to leave no one alive. It was not war. It was a message, and it was already on its way.
The village was quiet that morning. Too quiet. Alara sensed it before the first scream. A silence that didn't belong. Not the hush of snow or the stillness of dawn, but something darker. She stepped outside, her daughter still bundled in wool, clutching a wooden horse Kael had carved. Then came the thunder, not of hooves, of fire. Black banners were nowhere in sight, no legions, no emblems, just riders in dark leather, faces wrapped, swords drawn. They moved with purpose, no warning, no mercy. She clutched the child to her chest and dove into the woods, heart pounding louder than the burning rooftops behind her. Smoke followed them, thick and choking. She knew these woods better than most, but not better than killers who'd studied their prey. They were not soldiers. They were ghosts, sent to erase. By dusk, the village was ash. The well was poisoned. The elder's hall burned. The cradle where Kael once rocked his daughter lay overturned, cracked, and blackened. Of the dozen who tried to flee, only 3 made it beyond the trees. They hid for 2 days, trembling under ferns and behind boulders, too afraid to cry. And when they finally emerged, the only thing they carried was a necklace, bone, soot-stained, strung on leather. They began the long walk north, toward the war, toward Kael. The wind behind them carried more than smoke. It carried grief and rage. And somewhere far across the mountains, Kael awoke with a weight on his chest, a storm he could not yet name. But it was coming.
Steady and grim, like a bell tolling from a far tower, Kael returned from a skirmish 3 days later. They were waiting, the survivors, covered in soot and grief. They said no words at first, only handed him a small, charred object, a bone necklace, the one he had carved years ago. Kael did not weep. He listened, he burned, and he walked into the forest alone. There, beneath the ancient pines, Kael screamed, not a cry, not even rage, something deeper. The forest listened. That night, he returned to camp, eyes hollow, voice calm. "We ride at dawn," he said, and no one questioned him. relentless, powerful, like the roar of storm winds and fury. What followed was not war, it was vengeance. Kael's army moved like a shadow. Scarpus's outposts fell within days. Roman caravans were found burned. Officers vanished without trace. Kael did not seek prisoners. He wanted Scarpus to feel the same fear, the same helplessness. They painted war marks on their faces. They sang songs of the dead. Every warrior, from Marcus to the youngest barbarian, knew this was no longer a campaign. It was a funeral march for an empire. And Scarpus, hearing the thunder grow, began to wonder, had he created a martyr or a monster?
Grand and tragic, as if the tale is already legend. Kael stood once more at a cliff, the very one where he had sworn vengeance. He had no more family, no more peace, but he had justice and an army behind him. Marcus stood by his side, silent. Quintus lit a torch. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked. Kael nodded. Not ready, just done waiting. The final campaign was about to begin. Rome would feel his name.
The Empire thought it could erase a name, but names, like fire, spread. Kael is no longer a man. He is a reckoning. Subscribe to the Lost Chapters and follow the final march toward the gates of Rome, because the ashes still burn.